Post also says that the psychological evaluation report should include any additional information reported by the evaluator to the department shall be limited to that which is necessary and appropriate, such as the candidate's job-relevant functional limitations, reasonable accommodation requirements, and the nature and seriousness of the potential risks posed by the candidate. That does seem to limit the information, doesn't it? You remember the old days when we used to do essentially a clinical report that included their developmental history, psychosexual history, I mean, sexual orientation would be discussed in the reports. I mean, there was a whole bunch of information that was included.
Childhood history?
Pardon?
Childhood history.
Childhood history? Absolutely. We gathered it. We found a way to report it. It was just basically a data dump. And that now flies in the face of the standard of practice. And there are a number of court cases we're going to talk about in a moment that make that problematic, or cite why that's problematic. Let's go to the next one, please. Troy?
Can I ask a post question?
Yes.
Before you move off it. First slide, your category A1. Do you ever view that as both medical and non-medical?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that has medical and non-medical components. I'm talking about emotional stability and stress resilience. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So I want to include here something that you don't have in your slide notes, and this comes from an article by Meyer et al., 2001, American Psychologist. It's an article on psychological assessment versus psychological testing, and this, in my view, is the article that you want to read after reading Michael Cutler's really important, I think, compelling article on actuarial assessment that's coming out in the handbook. Because this takes a different perspective, of course. This is the more nomothetic analysis. Meyer et al. Write that psychological assessment, in contrast to psychological testing, is, and I'm quoting, a complicated activity that requires sophisticated understanding of personality, psychopathology, and the many ways in which neurological disorders are manifested in cognition and behavior. Knowledge of psychological measurements, statistics, and research methods. Recognition that different assessment methods produce qualitatively distinct kinds of information. Next slide, please. Understanding of the particular strengths and limitations of each method and of different scales within each method. A capacity to conceptualize the diverse real-world conditions that could give rise to a particular pattern of test data. The ability to challenge one's judgment by systematically linking the presence and absence of test indicators to the psychological characteristics under consideration. And the interpersonal skill and emotional sensitivity to effectively communicate findings. Now, I think that that's a compelling capture of what happens in an assessment process. And they make the point that psychological testing is effectively the dumb stethoscope. It's the MRI. But it takes a physician to properly read it and interpret it. And the psychologist's role in that should properly involve that data source, but it should also include other important, rich data sources. How many times have you seen an applicant that when they get into your office, they choke, they just vapor lock? They look good on psychological testing, perhaps. Had one the other day. She comes into my office. And I ask this question routinely, not because there's any orthodoxy to the answer. It just begins the conversation as to why they want to be a police officer. And don't you wish you had a buck for everyone who said, aside from I want to help people, that they've always wanted to be.
Yes.
Now, my response to that is always the same.
I didn't ask you how long.
Exactly. I said, you know, that's a very interesting answer, but it's an answer to a question I didn't ask. I never asked you how long you wanted to be a police officer. I asked you why you wanted to be a police officer.
Hey, Dr. Corey, could you please repeat that question? We didn't hear it.
Sure. Why do you want to be a police officer? And then the answer is, because I've always wanted to be one, since I was a little kid. So it's an answer to a question not asked. So I redirect them back to the question. And so I did in her case, and she said, I don't know, 45 seconds goes by, I'm not exaggerating. And she said, because I'm a solver problem.
Solver problem.
I said, I'm sorry? She said, I'm a solver problem.
Wow.
I said, really? What is that? Oh, I mean a problem solver. Now, from that moment on, she was pretty non-functional. By the time I got to measuring cognitive functioning, digit span, she's functioning at the 5th percentile. She can't do 3 digits backwards. Just vapor lock. That's interview behavior. Shouldn't be ignored. It's relevant behavior. But it's not going to be represented in all likelihood given the data sources we have in the literature as a predictor.